Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm so glad you're here with us tonight. I'm John Langs. My pronouns are he, him, and I serve as the artistic director of ACT Theater in Seattle, Washington. It is April 6th. It is 2021. It's 7 o'clock sharp. And although we're not producing in person yet, I know I can speak for the whole ACT community when I say we cannot wait to have you back in our theater spaces. And we hope that you and your loved ones are safe and that you're vaccinated. Before we begin tonight, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge that ACT Theater sits on the unceded ancestral land of the Coast Salish people. And we honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it, including the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present, and many other indigenous peoples who call this land home. They are the land's first storytellers in whose footsteps we walk. Tonight's event is shared digitally, and with all the benefits that that has, we also need to acknowledge that we are using a technology that is not available in some indigenous communities. So to make good of this time, we ask that you join us in considering our individual role in reconciliation, in decolonization, and in allyship. Thank you. Now, for those of you who are joining ACTLocal series for the first time, just a little quick background. This series began in 2019 when we were introduced to the good people at Trial and Error Productions. Now, they're a Seattle company that has a terrific mission. They support astonishing artists. And with a strong overlap in mission, these two companies, ACT and Trial and Error, came together to launch a series of workshops intended to support contemporary work by local playwrights. And it is doubly true in this moment that the only thing constant is change. So tonight we need to announce a change to the ACTLocal lineup. Stacey Flood's play, The Optimist, or What Space-Time Means to Me, is an allegory that's based on the songs of Jimi Hendrix. And we need to reschedule that because the creative team wanted to do this piece at a moment in the future when we could all gather in person. And the way they've described this piece, it will be a total blast to do so. But in its place, we are thrilled to announce Hell You Talking About Part 2. And that is the epic adventure written by core company member ML Roberts. And it will return for its next installment, guided once again by director Steve H. Brodnicks III and a cast from across the country that will reassemble to bring you a live reading for the next chapter of this ambitious work on June 11th and 12th. If you didn't see the first part of Hell You Talking About, there'll be some social media from ACT Theater that tells you, catches you up, gives you a little bit of the plot of the first part, so you can look for that soon. Tonight, I also want to remind you that our next offering in the digital series, our 2021 digital series, is a co-production between the Hansberry Project and ACT Theater, our core member, Reginald Andre Jackson, and director Valerie Curtis Newton. The piece is entitled A History of Theater, by, for, about, and near. And this piece, which charts the process of creation of an ambitious and heartfelt work, was filmed and edited and will drop on May 14th and be available on demand for 3 weeks. And that last sentence was one that I never thought I would utter as an artistic director of a live theater, but there you go. We're going to drop something that's going to live on demand for 3 weeks. Now, for the main event tonight. We're sharing a conversation with the creative team of the play Crumbs, Migas. We'll be joined shortly by the inspired director, Kelly Kitchens, who was incidentally the last director on our stage, directing our production of A Christmas Carol here at ACT just before the shutdown, and local playwright Rebecca Tourino Collinsworth. Rebecca is the founder of Parley, an artistic home and collective where new play development work has happened for the past 7 years. In those 7 years, Parley has produced 70 world premieres. It's incredible here in Seattle. So we wanted to let you know a little more about Parley, and we're going to put the website into the chat. So if you'd like to learn more about them or support their work, and we please do, that website will be in the chat for you. And after the conversation tonight between Kelly and Rebecca, you'll have a chance to ask some questions. They'll be dropping by live. So just put your questions in the question and answer box below, and Kelly and Rebecca will continue the conversation with you. So thanks again so much for your support of ACT Theater during this very interesting time. We are so close to coming home to our building and seeing you in person. But in the meantime, the work of great local artists continues, and it is an honor to introduce two of them to you right now. Here are director Kelly Kitchens and playwright Rebecca Tourino Collinsworth.
Hi, Rebecca. It's so good to see you again.
Hi, Kelly.
I have missed you. It has only been a week, and I have missed you so much. So I'm so delighted to get to be back in a Zoom room with you to chat. How have you been this last week?
You was telling my husband I'm feeling a little bit of postpartum, that stillness and that emptiness after you've had a really important process. That I'm doing better now, but it's been kind of eerie and quiet. How have you been?
Very similar. It was such a special week, and with the process and you and the creative team and the cast, it was such a special week that yes, the not getting to do that every day, not having that to look forward to every day, I felt it. Mm-hmm. So I'm so delighted to be here with you today and get to talk more about Crumbs and about you and about your work. So, hey, listen, you've done a lot in the theater. I mean, a lot. You are an actor, a teacher, you've been a casting director, you're a director, you're obviously a phenomenally gifted playwright, and you're the founder of the Playwrights Collective, Parley. That's an astounding breadth of career with such diverse lenses on theater making. So this is a big question I'm going to ask you. Take it as you will. I know. But I'm just curious. I love origin stories. Where did it all start, and what led to what? And also follow up. How did those different areas connect with each other? Because they're so different. So where did it all start?
In my formative years, I definitely was veering in between acting and writing. It was always a back and forth. And I got my undergraduate degree in English. And then I went to an acting conservatory. And then I started traveling and working as an actor. And then I wrote my first play. And then I went to graduate school in acting. And then I moved to New York, where the playwriting actually started to take off a little bit. So through the whole thing, I've been teaching and directing, though, because I love the rehearsal studio. I think that's probably my favorite place to be. I don't think of them as separate so much. I feel like they each enrich and inform the other. And the time that I've spent acting and working with actors and working with playwrights has made me the writer that I am now. I feel like the plays that I've written, especially in the last few years, have really argued against this idea that there's one objective truth or one single correct point of view in any kind of story. And so I think I keep writing responses to stories that the culture at large has basically considered the story settled. So I don't think that any of that would have happened without the time that I've spent in various disciplines theatrically, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. What you say about they all feed in and not choosing, you don't have to choose. You get to do all these things and they inform each other. So I think that's amazing and love that you have the opportunity to do all that.
Well, that's the same as you, Kelly. I mean, you have a background in a bunch of different disciplines, and even your work as director, you direct lots of different kinds of work in addition to being an actor, a teacher, and who knows what else. I'm getting to know you. How did you land here? And how do you think about the different facets of your work creatively?
Storytelling was an access point to me to a much wider world as a child. And I loved reading and I love stories and it just gave me a lens that there was a bigger, wider world out there than the one in which I was living. And I remember getting cast in a play. I was a musician first. I liked being in the pit. I didn't want to be on stage.
What instrument did you play, Kelly?
Oh, I played the drums. Can you believe it? Percussion, because I can't sing or carry a tune. But I can hit things in the right order. But yeah, so I was playing for musicals, and they told me you got to audition, and I did, and that was sort of it. And I thought I was going to be an actor. I really did, because I thought, at that time too, I thought, there's one path. I didn't really think about the fact that there's a diversified world of art making, theater making that I could be involved in, but I was going to be an actor, and that was it, the end. And I did that for some time, but it's funny how time and life and the horizon broadening in new ways can just open up options for you that you didn't even first imagine were possibilities. I enjoyed acting. I still do when people let me do it, because it's stepping inside a different set of circumstances and live that character's life with a live audience. It's really fulfilling, but I started longing, you talk about how we get to certain points. Yeah. I started really longing for, hungering for a larger vantage point on storytelling. And like I said, building a character and living inside the world was fantastic, but I was looking forward to building the world itself with folks and having that experience. And some brave, beautiful people took a risk on me and gave me the keys to the car to drive. And then I just prayed I wouldn't wreck it. It's now my main job in storytelling. I still love doing other things because I think they, like you said, they do inform each other and they impact each other. It makes me, getting back on treading the boards, makes me hopefully a better director, more compassionate director, really understanding how incredibly difficult it is, the job that what actors do.
Yes.
I'm not a writer. So getting to work with new works, with playwrights, and this fascinating world in which you live and create. It's just as a director, it's just such a joy. It's such a gift.
Sometimes I just say, really, I just want to be in charge of everything. But really, there is this like almost like it's almost like a dollhouse. I had a dollhouse growing up. I built it with my dad, and having a whole little world, a whole home and a whole little world and all these characters to play with. For me, it was my happy place, So that's probably where I started storytelling, was in that little tiny venue, which now belongs to my niece.
Does it really?
Yeah. Yeah, she loves it. Yeah.
Well, we really are all storytellers. We are. We do that and play. We love to play. And I think sometimes I spend a lot of the time trying to remember back to that level of beginner's mind and innocence and youthful and all the possibilities. And this room can contain worlds. Oh, I love that playhouse, the dollhouse, is still building stories.
It's pretty sweet. Yeah. Yeah. She sends me pictures all the time of, she put the dolls in different positions and she makes different furniture for them. And it's awesome. Yeah.
My sister and I, that was one of the things that we most enjoyed, because we had to share dolls, right? And we had the Barbie dolls. We would build cities and build worlds for them, and we still did up until recently. We actually, when it snowed in Houston, when I was down here, we're like, oh, we should get the Barbies out and dress them in their little snow outfits, and we did.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's just fun to play, isn't it? It's fun. It is. Of course, playing now looks a little different because of the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
And finding, I'm thankful for the opportunities to do the things that we've done pre-pandemic, but the horizon shifted, of course, this past March when theater shut down, and what was planned, projects that were on the books, those dreams got postponed or put away for hopefully just a little bit longer. What were you up to? And also, how has the shutdown impacted you as an artist? Because we all have our own paths through this, oh my goodness, this challenging time. But I'm just curious, the before times, and now we're in the during times. What's that been like for you?
I've been struggling, like everyone I know. First few months were extremely hard, as we all waited to see if this was just going to be over in a matter of a few weeks. We were, like many people were, we were in rehearsal, and we were about to put a workshop up, and we had a great cast, and it was very disappointing. I was still meeting with Parley, my group, virtually. and we were all kind of getting used to Zoom, and we were all unhappy with it. This kind of dread and this kind of, where you'd get on the screen and check in, and you'd say, "How are you doing?" And people would just go, we spent a lot of time in like sitting quietly, just kind of feeling that loss and that anxiety. Once we got past a certain tipping point, I'm not sure what it was, the need to be creatively constructive became palpable. These are people who need to continue to make things. And so my thing has been just trying to keep going and keep connected to people and try to help my Parley family to persevere in this uncertainty. And, because they needed it, and I needed to be able to help in some way. I was writing Crumbs, Migas during that time, and I was finding it really difficult to really difficult to finish, because I couldn't imagine that anything could be done with it. There was almost no incentive to finish.
What kept you going? Because you did, obviously.
It was Parley.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like their family. Having that group of gifted writers show up every week, whether they felt like it or not, with stuff for me to read and talk about, and asking for my next scene. When are we going to get your next scene? That really made all the difference. Writers really, I think, need that. And that's Parley began as a response to that same kind of need that I feel among all of, I feel it among actors too, but writers are so isolated that they really need close-knit support, I think. When the pandemic hit for you, what were you doing, and what have you been doing? How have you lived and adjusted in this period of time?
It was an interesting shift, of course, as you say, for all of us. Right before the pandemic, I had this sheer unmitigated joy of getting to direct Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro for Kentucky Opera. I love stories that ask questions, right? That reach out to us with these just unbelievably generous, I think, invitations to investigate what it means to be human, and that ignite, these engines of empathies. And whether that's a gritty drama, I love stories. I love a gritty drama. I love a searing tragedy, or in the case right before the pandemic, that nuanced comedy, right? Stories with complex characters, with unbelievably complicated circumstances. I love revolutionary stories, which of course Figaro is. It's that really argues with humor and with heart for social equality and for the humanity of its characters, and illuminates a potential path to forgiveness and joy. So I was living that world. And of course the world of Mozart's music, which a genius composer who, again, here's the thing about collaboration, right? Which we've been talking a lot about over the week. When you get these creative souls into a room, originally it was a play by Beaumarchais, and then it, gets to Da Ponte and to Mozart to create this new thing with and collaborate around. And this is a composer who clearly had this connection for and affection for the story and the characters, and created this shimmering music that aches and drives and works because of the integration of the storyteller's heart for the material. So I was living in that world. And here's the thing, I count myself very fortunate, Rebecca, because I actually got to see that project to its completion, to its culmination. I know there's a lot of artists that got interrupted in the middle of a process, and my heart goes out to them. There's sets sitting in theaters that never saw an audience.
Yeah.
Right. There were dreams that were dreamed that hopefully will get to see the culmination. Right. But the shutdown, it paused us all in certain ways, and then the new ways of theater making, of course, came along because, innovation, obviously, intrepidness. So yeah, I went from that world, and I have to say, like you, my art heart went a little still. I talk about investing in the pause. And so I thought, what does that mean for each individual? And listen, that looks different for every individual. Some individuals, like you, were out there like writing, also like creating these beautiful, gorgeous, stunning works of art. I took a few different adventures that I never thought I'd take that had nothing to do with art making. I went camping, which if you know, when you know me better, you'll know that means I was desperate to get out of the house. Oh goodness. My last name, I like to say, is one of life's little ironies. I actually got in the kitchen and cooked a few things. Now listen, I didn't cook them well, and my sweet husband ate them.
That's love.
You know, and the other thing it let me do too, though, I think it is important as artists is engage in our humanity. And I think sometimes that I took the time to engage with like taking a walk and looking around and getting to see my neighborhood through the seasons. I did Sunday, I Zoom, right? Like a Zoom, I'm with you on Zoom sometimes, you know, oof. But I got on Sunday family supper with my family and had through Zoom and got to connect with them more regularly and in deeper ways than I ever thought I could. And let me tell you that gift of time, you know, my personal circumstance, having lost a loved one just recently, having that gift of time with them, that was extraordinary. So what was I doing during the pandemic? Yeah. And then here's the thing though, the opportunity to work with you and Crumbs came across, right? And then my little art heart, which was sort of still and silent. Oh, Rebecca, I want to get emotional. It just leapt up. Like all of a sudden it's like, hey, I'm here. I'm here. And it started beating. It was like, get me in the room, get me in the room, get me in the room with Rebecca. And this amazing story and this amazing artist. You know, a Zoom room, we talk about it, but a Zoom room is still an art making space. I know we all want to be in the rehearsal hall, but you know, it was an art making space, and I couldn't wait to do all the things with you and everything that we could possibly pack into a Zoom room in a week. And I remember one of the biggest questions I had for you, and the actors also had for you, after reading the script, was about the setting. Because here's the thing, we don't get to sit with a playwright often in the room with us. So I want to ask you about the setting of Crumbs, Migas, and why a fictional country? Because I know some folks out there may share that question that we had. So tell us, why a fictional country?
Yeah, I made a country up. My starting point was a fairy tale. And I didn't want to write a history of one specific country, because I didn't think I was the best person to write that story. I set out to write kind of a modern allegory, a way of examining struggles that I see all the time and competing needs in the small scale and in the large scale. So like in the small scale, I see parents having to make impossible decisions, families split up, and I see and experience this sense of children always calling their parents to account for the choices that they made. And then in a large scale, this feeling that I have of living in like a modern paradox, that we're, on one hand, there's this dream, this sense of a unified global network, you know, connection, this idea of autonomy and access, that we feel more somehow able to move around the planet and know people and places around the planet more than we ever have before. But at the same time, we're constantly reminded how small we are and how much we're pushed around by forces beyond our control, by people that we will never see and we will never know. So that I'm sort of writing that experience of living now and just using the lens of a fairy tale, and maybe, you know, maybe also that, you know, there's a sense that in the play that the idea of US American exceptionalism is its own sort of fairy tale, its own sort of myth. And so I'm kind of playing with overlapping those senses that I just feel very strongly.
Now I know you're talking about the fairy tale, the folklore, the myth. Yeah. That's underneath this story. And I know that Hansel and Gretel played a sort of a big part in the arc and the genesis point for the writing of the story. Can you talk a little bit about the meaning of that particular folk tale to you and its relationship to Crumbs, Migas?
Do you know there are just those stories that grab you and keep you? And that was one that really bit onto me at a very young age, and never sat right with me. I can still remember the illustrations, the gorgeous illustrations in this picture book of the story that I would read and reread and reread. I was just haunted, I think, by the father who somehow was prevailed upon to abandon his kids in the woods when there wasn't enough food. And in fact, when I was a small kid, I have strange memories of being absolutely terrified when I was in one part of a grocery store away from a parent, or in a car waiting while a parent ran in to do errands, terrified that I was going to be left. And I don't know where I got that fear, because I wasn't left, not at all. I think it was connected to this story. What really baffled me as a kid was that when Hansel and Gretel were reunited with their dad, they forgave him. Especially actually when I was a teenager, I was like, what? No. But something happened, I as a parent now, my stomach just drops when I think about the horrible circumstances that would be happening to me if I were in a position of having to make that kind of decision. Mm-hmm. And I see that there are still parents all over the world who are faced with no good choices, who love their children. Writing the play was kind of a hard opening experience for me. And it kind of let me put that fairy tale to rest too.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I have a different relationship with it now, which is something that I tend to do, at least in the last few plays. I tend to take a story that doesn't sit quite right with me, and do it and respond to it, kind of start a conversation with it. And then that makes it mine in a different way, and allows me to move forward, to feel like, yeah, that's better.
I love that. A conversation, like you're having that active conversation with that story.
Right. Like in a play I wrote a few years ago, Maiden Voyage, was a response to the Odyssey. I had read this article on salon.com that posed the question, or the idea, that somebody had a theory that a woman might have written the Odyssey, and how might that be possible? And I thought that was totally outlandish. And at the same time, I was looking at the Odyssey a lot, and I was looking at Penelope, and I was so irritated. I was so irritated by her position in that story. And so I started imagining this story in which Penelope is writing this adventure about her husband while he's away. Writing these epic adventures as a way to explain to her son, Telemachus, why dad has not come back yet. And, of course, it all kind of goes to hell when he does come back. He returns. What did she make up? Where was he? I feel a totally different relationship to that book now. I don't know. That's maybe my favorite thing about writing plays.
You get to have that conversation. You get to make it your own. But I know that some of the cast was, we talked about Hansel and Gretel and these characters' relationships, but I know there was surprise when folks realized, Elia is the witch, if you will. Now, I know there's not a direct correlation, right? But I would love for you to speak to how you had that conversation with the story, and how the humanity with which you invested those archetypes, if you will, in that story, and the complications that you gave them, and the complexity of their hearts, like you said. But I know they were surprised. So do you want to walk us through a little bit about those archetypes and how you decided to have the conversation and change the story?
I'm kind of on a redeeming witch kick. My last play, Cherubin, was partly a redemption of Sycorax, the character in The Tempest. So the way that I orient myself to these stories tends to be to go, whatever they say about a character can't be the only thing. It's just not, because the character wouldn't describe themselves that way ever. And as directors, certainly as actors, but we are advocating for the characters' points of view. We're not judging them. We're trying to figure them out and then let the characters make their points. Let them be wrong if that's the case. But that's how we learn, is to watch people be wrong, but really mean well. I mean, a lot of the times, right? I just thought that the witch in the candy house was kind of cheap. Like the idea, like kids love candy. Yeah, I know. And also, kids are afraid of being eaten. That's pretty primal, actually, I think. But this woman took them in and fed them. And so what I wanted to do was to not have these kids' adoptive mother be a villain, but rather someone who sees hungry kids and doesn't know how to be a mother and has to learn on the fly, and is perhaps as self-involved as anybody is, particularly somebody in the public eye. And so instead of having her trying to eat the children, literally, and instead of getting her pushed in the fire, which I did not want to do, I thought about it more like the United States consumed these children. The culture consumed these children. And because they were part of this photograph, this iconic photograph that I made up entirely, by the way, but because they were part of this photograph, everybody felt that these kids kind of belonged to them, and that is consumption. And a lot of United States culture is a consumption culture, for better and for worse. We're able to absorb and, in the best cases, celebrate, enjoy, honor everything that makes us special and different. And we can also, unfortunately, flatten, swallow, erase even what we're trying to respect. So there's where I wanted Alaya to come from, that place.
And I was also fascinated by your conversation with Gretel, if you will, your reimagining of that character. But I know that Gretel in this play, Marilena, I'm fascinated with I love your conversation with that archetype and that character in this play. Can you talk to us about what led you there?
Well, she's the younger sister. I was reading different kind of psychological analyses of the fairy tale. And it lined up a lot with, what I understand about my own sibling relationship and what I see around me. This younger sibling who is protected to the exclusion of her own agency and sense of herself, her independence, and her ability to claim who she is as distinct. Her brother wants to protect her. Her adoptive mother wants to protect her. And she's right at a point in her life where she's wanting to do something that's hers. She's wanting to decide what she thinks and how she feels. And instead of just kind of seeing the world through who her brother is and who these are powerful people, powerful, knowledgeable, people in her life who can kind of squash, not on purpose, at least not all the time on purpose, but kind of squash her own sense of self. The thing is that that's her. In the story, she has to save her brother. She becomes the bravest one. And in my play, she is very brave.
Yes.
And unfortunately, you know, because she's not given enough information, she makes a rash choice. But this is her journey. I mean, this is part of becoming autonomous and being allowed to make mistakes.
That's right. And I love her heart. I love her call to action and the fact she answers it in the best way that she knows how in that moment. Let's talk to me though. I do want to dive into the relationship to language, to Spanish, that each character has. It's so unique and it's so complicated. So tell us a little more about how you came to craft that element of the play.
Well, I love Spanish, first of all. I'm a lifelong student of Spanish because I did not grow up speaking it. So I wanted to be very intentional, very specific about my experience with language in real life. There are absolutely bi and trilingual people, but they have to think, they have to construct. So the play is not about people who speak Spanish and people who don't speak Spanish. But these kind of fascinating gradations of fluency that I encounter all the time in the world. So each of these characters in the play comes with a different orientation to language and language mixture. Like it's like if I've got a kaleidoscope and the characters are in a kaleidoscope, and you know, every time you click it, you see a character with a slightly different relationship to English or Spanish. And then you watch them try to understand one another. They try to make themselves understood, which is heroic to me. Language is not, for me, in my experience, language is not all or nothing. And it would be less interesting to me if it were.
And watching these characters navigate their fluency in a quest for understanding and communication, and watching that development, it's really stunning. And you've built this world, and we talked about, we've talked about Genesis points, and we've talked about the setting in the fictional country to give us this myth and this folk lore. But of course, to do that well, you did so much research. You did so much research, right? I know you didn't want to write a specific history of a specific place into the mythic, into the folklore aspect of it, but to do that, like I said, it requires so much research. And I know that you did a significant amount, and you also worked in partnership with Julieta, our dramaturg. I think not just for the workshop, but for a while with this play. So I'm curious, where did you begin with that research? What was that process like? What was that partnership like with Julieta in developing the script? Talk to us about research and dramaturgy.
Yes, it was a lot. It was a lot. Every time I thought I was done, there was more to do. It was rabbit hole after rabbit hole, honestly, for me. Because although I wasn't writing about a literal country in Latin America, I wanted to be fair and respectful of what actually has occurred and continues to occur. Well, so that I earn the privilege of telling the story, or creating a country. So yeah, it was a lot of history and memoir and political and economic theory, which I don't enjoy reading. It was regional slang. It was agriculture. It was espionage. It was coffee. I had my husband, thankfully, who is a historian. I had my sister, who is an academic. And I had the writers of Parley, who read and responded to every scene while it was being written over the course of months. And among them was Julieta, who ended up being the dramaturg and did an outstanding job. She was my Spanish tutor. I needed her help, and in text and email for a year now, probably, we try to communicate exclusively in Spanish. She's been enormously helpful to me and patient. And as an Argentine, she has this bone deep understanding of the context of the play, in addition to being a scholar. So I have learned so much from her. I needed the support that I got from her and from everyone around me. It literally would not have happened without that support.
It's so important to the process, I think, having the playwright dramaturg relationship, right?
Yes.
And every, oh my goodness. And then as a director, you know, as an interpretive artist, if you will, right? Having that sort of, I always think of it as this beautiful, I guess, triangle, but that conduit that holds the container, the world of the play. Yeah. It's not just about the research, but it's about the world of the play, and having that relationship and that collaboration in the room between the three, the director, the playwright, and the dramaturg is so important throughout the process, and the lens with which they bring to the collaboration and the questions they ask and bring to the table to all of us, to you as the playwright, to me as the director, to the cast. I know she was extraordinary in the presentation that she gave. It was really a starting point of our process, right? Yes. The script and all this research that you gave us and Julieta gave us, and the conversations we had around coffee and politics and a better entry point and understanding of the world that you built. It was really extraordinary. It was really incredible, that work that was being done, and fueled so many conversations to help us bring it to life for the reading. I'll just never look at coffee again the same way. So the research was so important to the process. And I know that on the first rehearsal, also, we didn't just talk about the world of the play, we read the play. That's what we were doing. What you were doing was hearing your play aloud for the first time in that room. And I'm not a playwright. I cannot imagine what that was like. So I want to know, what was your art heart doing when you heard your play for the first time in that rehearsal hall?
It's always so stressful. It's always so stressful. I'm always sweating and shaking by the end of it, every time. And I'll look down and I'll see that my hands are, gripping my clothes, right? And I'm like, try to, like, it's all right, calm down, This time through, with this play, which you're right, I'd never heard out loud. I was really keyed up, of course. It ended up being a lot more fun than usual. I think maybe because the pressure was off, I did not have to run a rehearsal. I had you. And because we were over Zoom, I could turn my video off. So I became an invisible observer. I could just take it in. The actors could kind of pretend I wasn't there. And I think that's better for them. I think it's having read some new plays in front of the playwright, it's you want to get it right, Yeah. But the first read through went so well that I was just beaming, which doesn't usually happen. I was just beaming, and I was also sweating and shaking, but I was smiling. It was really fun to be introduced to the characters I wrote in this way with these actors. Yeah, I totally fell in love. with them.
I was thinking back to what you said about how you want to have a conversation with the story, right? So you wrote the story, and it sounds like they left off the page and started having a conversation back with you on that day. Did you hear something that you didn't know was in your play?
The thing that I heard unmistakably was that ring of authenticity, where you can feel that the actor is able to reach for and bring something honest, which in a first read in particular is special. It wasn't really something that I learned about the characters, but there was this sense that I had not written something impenetrable, that they were picking up what I was putting down, that I wasn't going to have to explain, or defend, which I think as a playwright of new work, you're often in that position because to produce your work is a significant risk for a theater when audiences are perfectly happy most of the time coming in watching, The Importance of Being Earnest for the third or fourth time. And I love that play. Like, I enjoy it as well. But it's not a risk. And Oscar Wilde isn't there for the actors or the director to say, what were you thinking? Or like, I don't get this. Does it make sense? Or why do they talk so much, right? Or my character wouldn't do that. So when you're there, you're very, very vulnerable and sensitive to criticism and worried that what you thought made sense actually doesn't. And that I don't think that goes away. It hasn't for me. And, at this point, I've been doing this a while. So it was just this sense of heaven opening up and like, oh my God, they understand. It just made all the difference in the world.
I fell in love with the play and with you and with the cast. That cast, you talk about being nervous in the room. I think we were all a little nervous too, because you were there and we wanted to do, like you said, we just wanted to get it right. We wanted to do your beautiful words honor. And what a treat it was to get to sit there with you and ask you questions and have the courage to risk in the room, the conversations. Having a conversation about text analysis in front of the playwright is a moment of courage, but you always provided such a beautiful place of trust and safety for us to take risks and ask the questions. And for that, I'm forever grateful. It's just a really beautiful way to collaborate. And it was such a joy to be in the room with you and those artists. It feels like it was more than a week. I think that's why, like, when we were coming here today, I'm like, I miss you so much.
I know. With respect, you created that sense, that space, and that sense of pleasure and joy in the script and in the analysis and in just pleasure taken, enjoying the human beings in the process that was infectious, Kelly. And
it's fun, like we're saying, it's fun to play, right? It's fun.
It's really, really fun. It's so fun. It's so fun. And it just helped enormously that we kind of had an instant rapport.
Yeah.
And that I felt instinctively that I could trust you. It's so cool. You have not spoken about your process as a director. And how you approached this. Will you tell me about your directing process and how you approached it for this workshop?
Oh my goodness. Okay. I want to say secret, but it's not. It's not a secret at all. I was new to the script. I'm in my process. I often have a lot more time to prep. And talking about what we've learned from the pandemic and things like this. Listen, I'm a preparation person. I love deep prep, and this put me in a position of going instinctually a little more than, obviously doing the work and prepping, but I just didn't have quite the calendar time, right, to prep for the script I normally would in a normal process. But that was also another opportunity, I think, to learn, like, what is it like just to dive in. What is it like to, okay, this is where I am. I am new to this world and to this playwright, but let's just dive in and do it. And like we said, trust and love, right? Trust and love in the dive. And somebody's going to be there to throw the life ring when I started this struggle, right? But I say for this process, it was getting to talk with you, getting to dive into the research. I know it was nascent for me as far as where I was in the process, but getting in a room of artists that were functioning at there's such a high level, their artistry and their craftsmanship, getting to talk about the beatwork, your beatwork in this play, the structure of this play is so fascinating to me and has such clarity. Just crystalline and sort of driving towards those events and how you play around with time. So diving in as a director for that and doing what I could with, okay, here's what we're gonna do, or here's how we're gonna drive towards this event, or just, again, it's the week one of the table work, talking about the relationships, talking about the structure, playing around inside that, working a little bit out of order. But I'd say for me, yeah, that was the process was a little different than my normal process. And again, I think that's what an opportunity to learn and to trust, and to be gifted the script. Like I said, my little heart's like, please, thank you. I'm looking forward to continue reading it and to continue, analyzing it and finding the way you shift from the familial to the political, from the global to the individual, the scale and the design of which I think we're about to see too in the scene we're about to see. There's so many layers of meaning and access points that it's really fun. So we're going to watch a scene right now that from the play that I think has a lot of that going on, and also a scene that will give no spoilers. So this is the scene that we're going to see is from Act 1, Scene 4.
This scene takes place in the lobby. There's sort of a coffee bar in the lobby of this Hilton hotel in our fictional country in Latin America. And Maria Elena and her very famous mother, Alaya, have traveled to this country to make a documentary after the aftermath of this brutal war 15 years ago that killed thousands of people, and it orphaned Maria Elena and her brother Ivan when they were very young children. So Maria Elena and Alaya are trying to have this mother-daughter moment doing this coffee tasting in this very fancy hotel. And eventually Ivan joins them.
A bar off the Memorial Atrium in the Hilton. The atrium has a high-end Metropolitan Mall vibe, domed ceiling, chrome accents, polished stone floors. Maria Elena and Alaya sit at a small table in the atrium just outside the bar entrance, having recently been served the coffee flight. Maria Elena is looking at the colorful pamphlet about coffee.
Is she coming down anytime soon? I think we're supposed to drink these right away. Something about the crema?
Oh, no. She won't be joining us. Huh.
What is it?
Nothing. Looks like she's scouting locations this afternoon.
She's not coming? This was her idea.
She's doing her job. She didn't fly halfway across the world to drink coffee.
I thought I'd be doing the scouting. She'd be with me, but...
Relax. Beth knows what to do.
And I'm trying to learn. If she doesn't let me...
This part is a lot of footwork. You're not missing anything. She'll present you with options probably tomorrow. You're lucky to have her on your first important student film. Imagine.
She's being paid, right? More than airfare and lodging.
She's not an indentured servant.
Then could you please tell her to keep me in the loop?
Honey, that's what she's doing.
No, she isn't.
You're taking this a little personally.
Because it's my film.
You sound like an amateur. Beth's the best I've ever seen. When we went off air, I told her she'd always have a job with me. You will alienate her with the micromanaging.
You're worried I'll ruin your comeback. That's what this is.
Well, why shouldn't your film be good for both of us?
You're impossible.
Besides, it's not a comeback. It's a pivot. I just needed time and space to imagine what I might be beyond 42 minutes and a theme song.
Do what you say and say what you do. Starting today, you can choose your life.
Take this moment to choose your life.
It's yours.
Now's the moment to use your life. Ooh.
Mock all you want. We helped a lot of people, 5 afternoons a week for 12 years.
I was raised by Alaya Almansa, the architect of Choose Your Life television. My mother is worshipped by millions, and I can't even think about her show without rolling my eyes. So who's the bigger asshole here? My mom or me?
I still believe in it. Even when you and your brother take for granted everything my quaint little concept affords you.
Nobody could fill the vacuum you left. Nobody's even bothered to try.
Well, it was painful letting it go. But the media landscape evolves rapidly. And if you aren't strategic in your thinking, you won't survive. You'll be left behind.
I'm trying to think strategically. Beth left me behind anyway.
Listen to me. I've got you. You won't fail because I won't allow it. Where's this insecurity coming from? Have you ever wanted for anything?
I mean, no, not really.
You're not that hungry little girl anymore. You haven't been for years. These have been sitting a while. You want to toss them, reorder?
No way. They'll hate us.
Maria Elena refers to the pamphlet.
I'll start with the one on your left. We taste and then we look at the flavor wheel and discuss.
2, survival.
Limon. Clementina.
There's an English version on the back.
This way's more fun. Toronja.
Grapefruit.
Correct.
Naranja roja.
Right. This section is citrus. And this dulce y azucarado.
That's sweet, sugary.
Cola, caramelo. What's malvavisco?
Marshmallow.
You never spoke Spanish to us growing up.
Well, I can't really speak it. This is kids' vocabulary. You know more than I do.
I don't remember any. Palomitas de maíz.
Popcorn. But I bet it's still in there somewhere, your mother tongue.
Maybe don't talk about my mother's tongue.
You're right. What an odd expression.
What does this taste like to you?
Burnt.
What kind of burnt? Like burnt toast?
Pan tostado.
Burnt sugar?
Azúcar quemada.
I don't know. I'm getting burnt.
Coffee from this region is known for high acidity, sweet citrus notes, and a nutty finish.
Except this coffee wasn't grown locally, and it was roasted in Southern California.
Let's try the next one.
Burnt dirt. Scorched earth.
I don't see dirt here. Wait, there's soil. Tierra.
Ah.
Like terroir? Then maybe it's supposed to taste like dirt.
How do you know more about wine than coffee at your age?
I read people here mostly drink light roasts. This isn't it, right?
Ha, no.
We let it sit and killed the crema.
Honey, it was already dead. Too bad. I was looking forward to this.
There isn't much my mother remembers fondly about her last trip to San Romero 15 years ago. She remembers the coffee tasting better.
Try the next one.
These are roasted dark by design. Dark roasts create a uniformity of taste so the consumer knows what to expect. They also mask differences in the quality of the beans.
What do you think?
You tell me.
I mean, it tastes like McCafe. Should we order some food?
I think we'd better. I'm getting the shakes.
I'll go ahead and ask.
Maria Elena exits inside to the bar. The light on Ivan brightens.
Did you know Hiltons are supplied worldwide by the coffee bean and tea leaf? The beans they use are as likely to be from East Africa or the Pacific as Latin America. You can get the same stuff in your room upstairs for the Nespresso machine. The maids replenish little complimentary pods daily, along with the shampoo and the tiny bars of soap. There's a difference between the real thing and a simulation, even if you call them by the same name. let's say here is the textbook definition of any form of government. And here is the version that's practiced by society. Here is the textbook definition of communism. Here is communism as it's actually practiced. Not the same. Now take capitalism. Do we practice textbook capitalism? In the US, only the poor are subject to capitalism. For rich corporations, we practice socialism. I don't enjoy playing this role, raining on everyone's parade.
The lights shift until Yvonne is no longer isolated.
But I get around my mother. I can't seem to hold my tongue.
What an odd expression. Well, you got here in one piece. Come here and give me a kiss.
Yvonne approaches Alaya and kisses her cheek.
You want some coffee? It tastes just like McCafe.
If you wanted an authentic experience.
Beth asked me to confine myself to the hotel today. Call me a Philistine, but I prefer inauthentic to dead.
I love the scene. Like we were saying, there's so many layers to this scene. I cannot wait for audience to sit in a cafe of their choosing and unpack the scene over a cup of coffee of their own, and just really dive in to the little intricacies and these gems that are hidden inside there of that scene. I honestly can't wait for audiences to get to experience a full production of this play, and I hope that is on the horizon soon.
I hope so too.
I think it's so sparkly. Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to leave it there, Kelly. It's it was so beautiful, the week that we had, that I feel like there's a lot of runway left.
Well, I want to thank you for inviting me into that world. It was a thrill. It was a gift. A lot of us said that, Rebecca, in the room, and I'm going to say it again here. It was such a gift to be invited into that world, into your world, and to be a part of its process. And I cannot wait to be in a in-person rehearsal hall with you on whatever you're writing, whenever you're writing. It was an extraordinary process. I just keep saying it. It was a gift, and I say that on behalf too of every actor and folk that were involved in the process. So thank you so much for the invitation to come play, and thanks to Trial and Error and to ACT for the invitation to come play and tell this beautiful story at this point in the process. So thank you.
Such a gift, the whole thing, Kelly. Thank you, and thanks to everybody. And we hope this is just the beginning.
I don't know about you guys, but I didn't want that conversation to end. Hey, everybody, I'm Gail Bensler. I am the Director of Marketing here at ACT Theater, and I want to welcome you to the final bit that we've got on tap for you guys tonight, which is our Q&A session live with Kelly and Rebecca. I know we've got a lot to talk about. Kelly, Rebecca, are you guys there?
Hi, Gail.
Hey, how are you?
Doing so well. Glad to be here.
I love the yellow room. I was watching that going, wow, I need to get a decorator.
A little color never hurt anyone.
No, and I see the really gorgeous yellow. Is that a sunflower?
Yeah, it is about to open up.
Oh, wow, it's gorgeous.
So pretty.
Well, here we are. We're ready for Q&A, and I know that we've got already some questions that people have been asking in the Q&A box. If you guys want to get in on the Q&A, it's not too late to ask your questions. There's a Q&A box right down there at the bottom of your screen. Just push that, type your question in, we'll see it, and we'll see how many of your questions we can get to tonight. So if you guys are ready, let's dig in. We don't have that long.
That's great.
And I have to say too, as an espresso fanatic, I'm like dying for coffee after seeing that scene. So Rebecca, I want to ask, we were talking about layer upon layer in that scene, and how did this fictional hotel and a coffee tasting inspire you to take such a deep dive into the play's themes and characters? Kelly mentioned storyteller's heart. You guys kind of talked about that a little bit. But what was in your heart when you were conceiving of that scene, and what did you hope that it would telegraph? I mean, I know there's a lot there.
It's a great question. There is, I think, a lot there. I'll try to unpack a little bit of it. I think I started with this idea of illustrating a sharp divide between rich and poor, which is evident here in the States, but quite a bit worse in Costa Rica, the one that I imagined anyway. And so I thought, if this famous family is traveling to a once war-torn country, they are staying in a luxury hotel. And if Alaya is trying to have this mother-daughter moment with Maria Elena, it could have been a massage or something like that, but here it is this trendy coffee tasting thing, that the pleasure to be in this sampling culture, having beautiful options that are laid out for you to enjoy, and that sense of being a foodie, of developing this sophisticated palate, it's very first world to me. But there's also this pervasive question of authenticity in the play, between the thing itself and the simulation of the thing. So Ivan is there to shatter our illusions a little bit. The coffee beans might not even be local. They are not roasted locally, and they're being served in this country that's torn apart by poverty, so that consumers can, in one view, congratulate themselves on their taste, on their ability to enjoy this special thing, but it's false. Living in Seattle here, we live in this coffee culture, but if you go to Starbucks, the viability of the brand depends on the espresso beans tasting the same anywhere in the world that you walk into a Starbucks, for example. The consumer doesn't want to be surprised, so the beans are roasted really dark, and we tell each other that it's tasty and we like it, but I don't think that's the same as authenticity. So, and then I would say the last thing has to do with language and with culture. How much can you belong to a country if you don't speak the language of that country? How much are you allowed to claim? And if you're only sampling a very rarefied experience of this country, a rarefied, very wealthy experience, are you even traveling? Are you even learning? So I don't have any answers to these questions that I'm raising, but I certainly grappling with them in the play.
Well, it's interesting though with language, because the first thing I thought about was homogenization of culture. And you see that, I think, in the United States with the backlash for anybody these days who speaks another language, maybe in a line at the grocery store or at the Starbucks getting coffee. I think it's a really, really interesting thing that's kind of happening in our culture now. I don't remember that really being the case maybe 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, when people, I think, were like, wow, a person speaks another language.
It's fear, right? I think a lot of it is fear and this hesitancy to risk. It feels uncomfortable to not know something, or to not know what to expect. If you want a nice experience, and you think you're paying for it, a nice experience, then you are threatened by the idea that you might not get what you think you paid for. So it's just more safe to feel that you know what you're expecting. But of course, we don't learn very much when we're not made at least a little bit uncomfortable with something that we don't know enough about.
Let's, I think the next question, Kelly, this one goes to you, just kind of jumping off what Rebecca was just saying is, there's a lot to lean into in that scene. And what I'm curious about is why you picked that particular one to show us tonight.
I'm a director that doesn't love spoilers. So first of all, I need to think, I'm serious. Like, I really just like, go watch the play. I don't want to say anything about it. So it's early enough in the play that I feel like you can watch that scene and touch on the big themes that we talked about in the conversation that Rebecca's talking about right now, without it spoiling anything for you for the rest of the play. So it's got positioning in the action of the play was important to me, so that the audience could, I mean, that's the thrill of theater, right? It's getting to hear a story in this way for the first time together communally. So I never want to ruin anything for people. But this scene talks about those, it has Hansel and Gretel in it. I love the language is so loaded, like with the marshmallow and the sweet and things like this. As Rebecca was saying, the consumerism of it and the consumption of those big themes, celebrity and media, authenticity versus inauthenticity, the fact that a documentary is getting made, words like scorched earth are coming out of books' mouth, and just this turbulent history of coffee, and to put it in this hotel in this way. And also chose the scene too because of the wonderful theatrical device of Yvonne being in a different location in a different time. Yvonne starts the play in the present. This is yesterday, the coffee tasting scene. So it's this beautifully theatrical device where Yvonne actually is talking to an unseen audience. And I don't, again, no spoilers, but there is also that device. So this scene sort of had the familial, the political, the global, the local, the big themes, the Hansel and Gretel, and the theatrical device. So that was the thinking behind, which scene to do. So let's do this one.
Well, you know, when I was watching it, I wonder if this is true. Do you see Yvonne as kind of being the audience, as kind of being the conscience of the audience, kind of what's going on? Because he has a lot to say when he punctuates the dialogue that's going on in the part that's yesterday, right?
Right. We need an audience surrogate to some degree, just to help us to follow the action. It gets quite complicated, I think, without somebody who can help frame the story. And I guess conscience is a good word because he does challenge a lot as well. He's opinionated, and he's still he's a young man and probably a graduate student. And he's at a place where he's extremely frustrated. And he also feels a responsibility to be as honest and forthright as he can be. And that makes for awkward conversations around a dinner table or around Thanksgiving. You know, it's not a comfortable way for families to gather. But in my life, I really rely on people who are willing to tell the hard truth. I really need that because I'm less likely to do it in the moment when I'm anxious. I need to think about it and sit with it. I'm right about it, probably. So I really admire his candor.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it in that scene too. And I was really, as someone who saw the workshop, who saw the live reading, it was really interesting watching that scene again, because I remember it being one of my favorites when I saw the play reading live. And you know, you're talking about authenticity, and you mentioned Julieta, dramaturg, earlier in your conversation, and I'm excited that she's in the audience tonight. Hi, Julieta. But she has a question I think is really interesting. So let's try to dive in. I don't know if you can see it because it's a very, very long one. But she says, Rebecca, you and I talked about what's happening right now in Colombia, that state crackdown on demonstrators protesting the government's plan to implement a regressive sales tax that hurts those who have already been hurting due to the pandemic. She mentions the 24 people who have died and so much more. And she says, you know, we learned about the sickening reality of U.S. soldiers going in and sexual assaults on young girls, raping young girls. We're seeing that violence is spreading from the countryside to the cities. Colombia is a U.S. principal ally in the region. What are your thoughts? Because I know that there are parallels with what happened in your fictional country in the play, especially with the fact that there was a coup that happened before the play opens and is a big part of what happens, without trying to give away any spoilers. How can we talk a little bit about some of these parallels that are really going on today in reality?
Yeah, thank you, Julieta, for this this question. Yeah, I do want to address it. It's a difficult one to address. It's complicated. The situation in Colombia right now is really devastating. It's grim, and it's overwhelming. In my play, Ivan says, context is everything, but nobody has any time for context. And for me, this play is really only successful if it helps us to pay more attention, open our ears to context. Like in this question, there's a lot of really important information in there. I tend to be a non-confrontational person in my life. And it serves me well a good portion of the time. But I think that the way that I present myself occasionally gets in my way. And maybe it allows me to hide in plain sight. And I worry whether people assume that the illusions that I made in the play are only coincidentally related to real life events, when everything that I wrote on purpose. The play was difficult to write in large part because the more I studied, the more that I confirmed what I already vaguely knew to be true about the United States, but I didn't want to look at it. Many people in this country will classify foreign policies as either, well, they're conservative policies or they're liberal policies. They're Republican or they're Democrat, when in fact, it's just very much a US thing. It's reinforced by both major political parties, and it's a decades-long attempt to place Latin American countries under our control, either directly or indirectly, in order to enrich ourselves at their expense. So that's hard to say out loud because it hurts to say and to admit. We interfere with their economies, with their military, with their elections. So from what I've seen, the US has set the table for what is happening in Colombia right now, just as it has in so many other places that I am still undereducated about, I'm still learning about. Unfortunately, my play is scarily prescient. I did not know that this was going to occur in Colombia, but the pattern is absolutely visible if you're looking at all. And I can't say that I was totally unaware, but I think that in this country, it's painful, and we don't want to look. So in my way of addressing it, I can retain emotion and story better than I can historical facts. So I try to make plays that help someone like me to grapple with stuff that's so difficult.
Well, it's difficult conversations, and I think things that, it's one of the really interesting things about art, in the way that it really makes you think in a way that you might not have encountered before. And I think, this your play certainly does that with this, this fictitious Central American country, and using the themes that you did throughout. I really hope that everybody gets a chance to see this play, because it really is an extraordinary piece of work, and one that I hope we all get to see very, very soon. Thank you for that, Rebecca.
Thank you, and thanks, Julieta.
Yes, thank you, Julieta. Kelly, kind of changing tracks just a little bit. Stephanie wanted to know, what would you do differently as a director if you were directing this in the theater? So in other words, would there be different choices that you would have made within the play, and how it was presented if we were live and in person, and getting to see this the way that I know, Rebecca, right? You wrote this to be seen live and in person.
That's the magic question, isn't it? For a reading versus a full production. So I'm going to answer this question that, were I to direct this reading for an in-person audience? Because of course, if I have a thousand ideas about if I'm directing a full production of it, right? With design and sound design and lighting design and things like this. But for a reading, the thing that I think that is always hard on Zoom, that's a challenge on Zoom, is of course the lag that happens, and also not being able to feel each other's heartbeats. So in an in-person reading, there is that way that you can really pick up on each other's breath. You can pick up on each other's physical cues. There's no lag. It would allow us at music stands, is what I'm imagining, to actually have actors be able to look at each other and also change some positioning. And also an in-person reading. And listen, I'm so thankful. Oh my word, I'm so thankful for the Zoom room and getting to be in the Zoom room with these folks, because there were times I could still feel their heart through the screen. Yeah, so I don't ever want to sound ungrateful, but for the question, I think I also could have played around a lot with Yvonne's connecting with the audience, and the fact that he is so out of that tighter world of the past of yesterday and the day before yesterday. So it would have been fun just to have him actually pick up that script off the music stand and actually, I don't want to say confront, but have a conversation very intimately with another audience member. And when do you pan out and include everybody, and when do you pan in, kind of thing in a theater? And of course with a Zoom, it's one lens, one camera. We did play around with, just, I don't know if this is probably a lengthy answer to this question. We did play around with playing with some eye lines to make it look like they were looking at each other. But in the end, I think that was going to not serve what we needed to do in the room to read the play and hear it. So we had to all look at the screen. So thank you for the question. And I just, again, am thankful for the opportunity to have gotten in the Zoom room, and I cannot wait to be back in person with for all of you out there right now, and all the souls that are out there that are also looking forward to getting back in the theater, because we can feel your heartbeat too, you see. Actors shift their performances, getting that feedback loop from the room. So I think there are things that would happen in the room that I would never, even wasn't going to be anything about me or my direction. It'll be about that conduit of Rebecca's beautiful script through those actors with that audience. So I think that also would have been an element had there been an in-person. I hope that answered the question. Thanks for the question.
That was awesome. Well, I think we've got time for one last question. And I think that, it's really interesting, again, talking earlier in the conversation about, works that are based on different works, or expanding a work that may be known already. And in this case, with Hansel and Gretel, and talking about the father, well, not really Hansel and Gretel, but still it's a father who abandons his kids, right? So Constance was really interested in a little bit more information about the father. And I think, it's a two-part question. So I think maybe Rebecca talking about the character, and then Kelly, how do you figure out how to portray that type of character who may or may not be absent in a work, but is kind of there all the time?
The father is, for me, well, he was the least knowable character in the original story. And I needed him to stay in some ways unknowable. I think that is one of the things that I've learned being a parent, is this, this sense that you're never fully knowable to your children, and you don't ever fully know your parents. You can reach for it, but there are some questions that you don't get answers to. It was important to me that the character of the father in my play, that I learn how to understand him, like understand and forgive, but also not make him solely a victim, or leave his agency and dignity out of the equation. A whole person, lovable, not fully understood, and flawed. Those are the characters that I love watching the most, and I really loved what Leandro Cano did with the character of Adelio, to bring that with so little. He honestly didn't. He has the least amount of lines in the play, but he brought so much humanity to that role.
Also that old adage, right? Every character is the hero of their own story.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
That's
Kelly,
right.
what would you say?
No, that's absolutely everything you said, Rebecca. It's the complications that you gave these characters that exist in the human heart. And Leandro, your words and Leandro's interpretation, he brought a father's heart to that role, and just the unbelievably impossible decision that he had to make in that moment. And I don't know spoilers, but it's hard to talk about that spoilers. But the interactions that he oh, no spoilers, yes, that he gets to have with his kids. Can I say that, Rebecca? I don't want to spoil anything. Okay, great.
You can say. I think you can say.
The interactions that he has with these adult children who he hasn't seen in 15 years, that know nothing about each other, and that the mysteries and the myth and the mythologies that we tell ourselves about that event. And how everybody has their own prism. I loved your kaleidoscope, Rebecca, how he enters the story and all of a sudden the kaleidoscope just shifts in a way that I find him, if not, I guess I do find him sympathetic, but understandable. And that thirst, that hunger to be understood, and if not forgiven, to be understood. And then some more impossible decisions, of course, are made by different characters. And I wonder what they're going to think in 15 years about the decisions they made, and where we all are on that continuum of time, and finding somebody who has that hunger for the humanity of a character in an impossible situation. Yeah, did that answer the question?
Oh yeah, it sure did. I mean, I don't know about everybody in the audience, but I am dying to see this thing on the stage. We've got to get this thing on the stage as quickly as possible so everybody can see what we're talking about. We don't have to worry about spoilers so much anymore. I just
Start a petition, Gail. Start that petition.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I can't tell you how much fun I had tonight. I think this might be my favorite ACTLocal Playwright Series panel that we've ever had. And I think, you know, Rebecca and Kelly and you guys out there in the audience, I think what we've been able to talk about tonight and what Rebecca and Kelly talked about so well in the conversation and the play reading that we did earlier as part of our digital season, just really puts a spotlight on the great work that the ACTLocal program is doing here in developing astonishing works by playwrights here in the Seattle area. You know, please watch, please stay tuned. There's more coming. And I'm just so excited, Rebecca and Kelly, to see where this play goes. And thank you so much, both of you, for coming on tonight and spending some extra time with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Gail. And thanks to everybody. And Kelly, I will catch you soon.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
All right, everyone, that's the end of our presentation tonight. So on behalf of John and Rebecca and Kelly and all of us here at ACT, thank you very, very much for joining us tonight. We'll see you soon for the History of Theater. Good night, everybody.